Ever get overwhelmed with like all the paths out there, especially in spirituality?
Yeah, totally.
Today we're going to like dive deep into Sant Mat with Kabir's teachings and unpack this idea, this concept of 12 paths that are created by Kal, you know, the negative power.
Right.
And to navigate this whole thing, we're going to be using the Anurag Sagar.
Okay.
And some extra writings and commentaries.
It's like, have you ever seen those old maps?
Yes.
And they have like the little, here be dragons. It's like a warning. Right.
A warning.
Like, be careful. There are some dangerous paths out there.
Exactly.
So you need like a guide.
And I think that's what makes this deep dive so relevant.
Yeah.
Because right away in our source material, we have a disciple, Dharam, who's basically begging Kabir for clarity.
Oh, wow.
He's like, please. Like, and it's so funny. It's page 436 if you want to look it up.
Okay.
Dharam cries out, Lord, I am so confused about these 12 paths that Kal created. I don't want to be misled.
You know, it's interesting, that desperation that he has, it's something that even today,
it's so relatable.
Seekers can really connect with. Like, how do we find authenticity?
Yeah.
And he's recognizing that, you know, just intellect
totally
only takes you so far.
Yes.
You need to find a true master, somebody who's realized.
Yes.
To get you there.
Totally. And Kabir, you know, always the reassuring guide is like, don't worry, I'll break it down for you. And he promises to reveal not just the names of these 12 paths, but their practices and their secrets.
Oh, wow.
It's like a spiritual cheat sheet.
And you know what I find so fascinating about this?
What?
Is how Kabir just dives right in. He's not afraid.
Yeah.
To talk about these misleading teachings.
Totally.
And I think that's so valuable.
Yeah.
For anyone on a spiritual path.
Okay, so let's get to it. Page 437, there's a section called Veranschaulichungen. Okay.
Which is basically like illustrations or clarifications. And this is where we get those 12 paths.
Okay.
And what they are, and this is crazy, they're distortions of the true Sant Mat teachings.
Oh.
Kabir's like, these are complete lies.
I mean, using that strong language.
It's intense.
Really emphasizes how serious these distortions are. They're not just like, oh, a different way of looking at things.
Right.
It can really lead people astray, you know?
Yeah.
And prevent them from reaching their potential.
It's scary. And then, this is where it gets even more interesting. They've evolved. They haven't gone away.
Right. Like a game of telephone, right?
Yes.
Where the original message, it gets changed along the way.
It gets distorted.
It gets distorted. And this has led to like all these different groups claiming a connection.
To Sant Mat. But it's like, is it really?
Right. Right. And sometimes they'll even use similar words or practices.
Yes, making them even more like deceptive. Yeah. And that's where that, you know, we talked about it before, but that discernment.
Yes.
That critical eye is so important.
So important. And our sources mention Scientology, transcendental meditation, even certain energy work, you know, as examples.
Right, because it has that familiar ring to it.
Yes.
But you have to look deeper.
Yes.
What are the principles behind it? What are the consequences of following this path?
Totally. And as if navigating the paths themselves wasn't hard enough, now we have unqualified masters. Yeah. Within the tradition.
Within the tradition itself, yeah.
Page 437 has the section, Unwelcome Meister de Sant Mat. It's like imperfect masters of Sant Mat.
And that's a good point, because even within a lineage, that's authentic.
Yeah.
You can have people who, you know, haven't fully embodied the teachings.
Right.
Or maybe they're motivated by ego or personal gain.
Oh, totally. And they can be super charismatic.
Oh, yeah.
So they attract a following, but without that connection to name, to that essence.
It's like a ship without a rudder, right?
Yes.
It might look like it's moving,
yeah,
but is it going to reach its destination?
Exactly. Well, probably not. And to make it even worse, a lot of times they operate without authorization.
Right.
Like they don't have that lineage. They haven't had that transmission.
Right.
From a true master. And this isn't ancient history. This is today.
This is happening now.
This is happening now.
Right.
And a prime example of that is, you know, the controversy around Kirpal Singh's lineage.
Right.
So Kirpal Singh, a really important figure in contemporary Sant Mat, he lived from 1894 to 1974.
Okay.
And he very clearly said he would not have a physical successor.
Okay.
But then someone like Thakur Singh comes along.
Oh, no.
And says, I'm his successor.
Wow.
And on top of that, you have these publishing houses like Namverlag.
Right.
that are compiling these works and attributing them to Kirpal Singh.
Okay.
But there are questions about some of these texts.
Really?
Were they really written by him or by somebody else using his name?
Wow.
And so it raises these concerns about misinformation.
Okay, so we've got misleading paths.
Yeah.
We've got these unqualified masters. We've got these publications. Have we reached peak spiritual confusion?
Well, not quite. Our sources have more to tell us.
Oh, no.
About the sneaky ways.
Okay.
We get misled on this path.
Oh, my goodness.
Even with the best intentions.
Let's dive into that after a quick break. It's funny, we always think of distractions as, external things.
Yeah.
But our sources talk about how even music can be a distraction on the path.
It's true. And it really makes you think, right?
Yeah.
Like, are we trying to get around doing the real work?
Yeah. The inner transformation.
Yeah. And music is so powerful.
Yes.
It can bring up, like, these amazing feelings. Right?
Yeah.
Even, like, transcendent experiences.
Yeah.
But we have to be honest with ourselves.
Yes.
Are we just using it as a crutch?
Right. Like, are we just trying to feel good for a little bit and not actually, like, address the root of our issue?
It's like taking a painkiller.
Yes.
When you have a toothache.
Yes.
It helps in the short term, but you have to go to the dentist eventually.
Exactly. And that applies to so many things on this,
Oh, totally.
spiritual path.
So many things.
It's so easy to, like, chase those cool experiences.
Oh, yeah.
But really, when you think about it, the real work happens in those quiet moments of, like, surrender and...
It's the daily practice, right? It's the consistency.
Yes. And speaking of, like, trying to find these experiences, our sources also go into this rule of silence about inner experiences in Sant Mat.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
It happens in Vegas, stays in Vegas.
Exactly. But apparently, unqualified masters, this is what they do.
Oh, really?
They break the rule.
Wow.
And they encourage their students to share.
Oh, interesting.
And I guess it makes sense because sometimes sharing can be helpful, but in this case, it can actually, like, hurt your progress.
Because you start to, like, compare, and then ego gets involved, right?
Yes. Yeah. And also, these experiences, they're so personal.
They are.
And they're so hard to describe.
And the more you try to describe it, the further away from the experience you get.
Right. It's like a dream. The more you talk about it,
exactly,
the more you forget it.
It loses its power.
Yeah. So it's a good reminder that, like, real spiritual growth isn't about, like, racking up experiences.
Collecting trophies.
Yeah. Like, you're not, exactly. Like, it's not a competition.
Right.
It's about embodying, like you were saying, those experiences.
Yeah, it's about integration.
Yeah.
It's about letting it transform you.
Yes. Which brings us back to finding a true master.
Yes.
Somebody who can help us do that. But with all these voices and paths and everything, how do we even know where to start? How do we know who to trust?
It's so hard. And Kirpal Singh actually offers some really good advice on page 441. He talks about the importance of inner guidance.
Okay.
And he mentioned Swamiji Maharaj.
Okay.
Who was a...
I think I've heard of him.
Yeah, a big important figure in Sant Mat. And he said, when you're approaching a master, do it with humility.
Okay.
And be open. And he said the real connection isn't about, how they look.
Right.
Or what they say they can do.
Right, because that can be really misleading.
You can be so misleading.
People can be really good at, like, presenting themselves.
At presenting,
a certain way.
Totally.
And it's all, like, not real.
It's about the inner resonance.
Yes. Like your gut.
It's your gut.
Yeah. Our intuition.
That's your guidance system.
Yeah, and that takes us back to what Kirpal Singh was saying on page 442 about that cyclical nature of spiritual teachings.
Right, because the essence gets distorted over time.
It's like that game of telephone we were talking about.
Exactly. And it's not always intentional.
Right.
Sometimes it's unconscious.
Yeah, totally.
As these teachings are getting passed along.
Yeah.
They change a little bit each time.
Totally.
And so that's why it's so important to develop that inner ear, that discernment.
Yeah, to tell what's real and what's not.
Exactly. And not just blindly accept what you're hearing.
Don't drink the Kool-Aid. So how do we, like, escape that cycle?
Well, he really emphasizes finding a true master.
Okay.
And receiving that direct transmission of the teachings.
Okay. And it's not about blindly following.
No, not at all.
Right.
It's about recognizing somebody who embodies the teaching.
Okay.
And who can awaken that in you.
Okay. So it's more about, like, them reflecting something that's already inside you.
Yes, exactly.
Versus, like, giving you something.
It's not about, like, I have the secret knowledge.
Right.
and I'm going to give it to you. It's like, no, this is already within you.
Yeah.
I'm just helping you remember it.
Yes. Which brings us to that crazy story on page 446 of A.S.
Oh, yeah.
Who literally based his claim of being Kirpal Singh's successor on the fact that he looked like him.
I know. It's like, you can't make this stuff up.
It's wild.
It's wild.
And it's so interesting because it shows how much we, like, crave that external validation.
Oh, totally.
Like, if I look the part,
Yeah.
then I must be the part. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, it doesn't work that way.
And how easily we can be misled.
Yes.
If we're looking for those externals.
Yeah, we can't base it on that. And it's so easy to do because we do it with everything else.
Right. In all areas of life.
Yes.
That's how we judge.
It's true.
Right. So it makes sense that we bring that to spirituality as well.
Yeah. It's like just because somebody looks the part, talks the part, has the outfit.
As the followers.
Yeah. They could have tons of followers.
Right.
Doesn't mean
anything. And it actually, this example, it highlights the difference, right?
Yeah.
Between true lineage,
yes,
which is inner,
yes,
and, this kind of false lineage, which is based on externals.
Yes. Oh, and that reminds me of what you were saying about, the true qualities of a master,
right.
which is, humility, service, compassion, all those beautiful things.
Yeah.
And that takes us to Guru Gobind Singh's story, which is on page 447, where he describes coming back after leaving his body to serve the divine.
And it's so beautiful.
I know.
How humble he is.
I know. He's not coming back.
He doesn't want anything.
For power. He's not coming back for fame or recognition.
He just wants to serve.
He just wants to serve.
Yeah. Which is, again,
the
opposite of what we usually see.
Yes, exactly. And it makes me think about LR's story.
Yeah.
And how the teachings find their way to the people who are ready for them. Yeah. Like, her story is so cool because she encountered Sant Mat through a student of Kirpal Singh way after he had passed away.
Long after, yeah.
And she had this profound
experience. Like, what?
It shows you how powerful these teachings are.
They're timeless.
Timeless, exactly.
It's universal.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
And that the path is there.
It's there if you want it.
If you're open to it.
So we've talked about all these misleading paths, these unqualified masters, even distractions on the path. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Like, what's the main thing we should take away from all this?
I think, for me, it really comes down to discernment.
Discernment.
Yeah, like that inner compass.
Right.
That helps you figure out this whole spiritual landscape.
Because it can be tricky. It's like you need a map and a compass and maybe even a guide.
Exactly. And it's about, learning to trust your gut.
Your intuition.
Yeah. Asking those tough questions.
Yeah. Don't just take anything at face value.
Even if it sounds good. Right. Even if it comes from a big name or a popular book. So it's not enough to just learn stuff.
It's not about filling your head with information.
Okay. So how do we do that? How do we develop that inner filter?
Well, it's a process.
Okay.
It's not like one and done.
Right.
It's something you cultivate over time.
Okay. That makes sense.
And as you grow, your understanding changes.
Right.
What might have resonated with you at one point might not feel true anymore.
It's like you're always growing and evolving.
Exactly.
And that can be a little scary.
It can, but it's also exciting.
Right. Because it means you're not stagnant. You're actually moving forward on the path.
Yes.
Okay, so we're always growing. We're always evolving. It's not enough to just know stuff.
Right. Knowing something isn't the same as becoming something.
That's so true. And I think that quote from Kirpal Singh really sums it up. The one on page 450. Knowing something is not becoming something.
It's easy to get caught up in the intellectual side of spirituality.
Right. Like, oh, I've read all these books or I've listened to all these podcasts.
But it's about embodying those teachings.
Yes. Living them. So it's a call to action, right? Like, what are we going to do with this information? How are we going to apply it to our lives?
Exactly. What steps can you take starting today to move from that intellectual understanding to that lived experience?
Because that's where the real transformation happens.
Yes. And it's going to be different for everyone.
Right.
It might mean finding a teacher or deepening your meditation practice.
Or even just being more mindful in your everyday life.
Exactly. It's about finding what works for you, trusting your intuition.
And being willing to put in the work.
Yeah.
So to all of you listening, on your own unique paths.
Keep going.
Yes. Keep seeking. Keep asking those big questions.
Don't be afraid to dive deeper.
That's it for our deep dive today. Until next time, keep exploring.